Welcome to Docket Decoder. If you enjoy our content, please help us out by hitting that like button or leaving your comments for us. And don't forget to subscribe to stay up to date with the latest court filings.
Let's talk about affidavits and search warrants for a minute. Did you author affidavits in this case?
Yes, ma'am.
And did you use affidavits you authored in support of search warrants to obtain information that you wanted to take a look at?
Yes, ma'am.
And did you author the affidavit that was used for the arrest warrant for Bryan Kohberger?
Yes, ma'am.
What did you rely on when you wrote these affidavits?
Be more specific.
Yes, let's focus on the affidavit for the AT&T records. There were 2 search warrants on December 23rd, 2022. Are you with me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so let's talk about those search warrants and the affidavit. First, the affidavit. What did you rely on in the affidavit you wrote for the first AT&T search warrant on December 23rd, 2022?
It was a conglomerate of interviews, data received from cell phones, my observations of some surveillance footage that was taking place, various other things. Go down the line. If you could be more specific on specific parts, I'd be happy to tell you what I'd like.
In your affidavits, did you rely on cell phone information and cell phone location information?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you work with cell phone records yourself?
No, ma'am.
Did you see cell phone records yourself?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
When was the first time you saw cell phone records that were attributed to Bryan Kohberger?
I do not remember what date that was.
Well, maybe you can give me an estimate. We know on the 20th, you're talking to WSU about an observation from a month before. And we know on December 23rd, you're asking for AT&T warrants for information. Can you narrow it down?
Yes.
Sorry, Judge.
That's a yes. You can, I just want to get the record. Yes.
Yes, that's
Okay,
correct.
thank you.
So between those 2 days, does that help you identify the first time you saw cell phone records related to Bryan Kohberger?
Memory serves, the first time I saw any cell phone records related to Bryan Kohberger was after we received the return from the first search warrant.
Just to be sure I'm tracking with you, when you say the return from the first search warrant, we're talking about the first AT&T warrant.
Yes,
Is that right?
That's correct.
And in that warrant, you were seeking 48 hours worth of records. Is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So if I call those the 48-hour records, we'll both be on the same page?
Yep.
All right. You wrote your second AT&T warrant for a much longer period of phone records that same day, December 23rd, correct?
Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
How far ahead of that warrant did you see the records?
It would have been upon the receipt of the 48-hour records that came in from AT&T. Immediately after receiving those, I began writing that second section of the second AT&T warrant for the longer period. That makes sense.
It does. So you get these records and you take a look at them and you start writing your warrant. Is that right?
The records were provided to FBI Special Agent Balance, who began deciphering them. I'm not an expert in cell phone records.
That was the next thing I was going to ask you.
So, no, ma'am, I'm not. So, he was the one who was conveying that information to me so I could understand what it was.
So do you get the records and then get them to him somehow?
Yes, ma'am.
The records do they go directly to Balance?
I do not recall what the distribution was on the return itself. I do not recall that.
Are you and Balance exchanging emails about these records?
No, ma'am. Not that I remember.
How did you get them to them?
We were co-located. At the time, Detective Balance was at the Moscow Police Department about 30 feet down the hallway.
Are the 2 of you exchanging text messaging during this time?
I do not remember if you texted during that time.
I may have a record that would refresh your memory. I'm certainly not seeking to have these admitted, but I'd like to hand him some records to see if we can refresh his memory. Do you recognize what's been placed in front of you?
No, ma'am, I do not.
Okay. Does reading the content of some December 23rd messages refresh your recollection about participating in text messages with Nicholas Balance?
It really does not, ma'am.
Will you look at, there's 3 separate stapled documents. Will you move that one and go to the next one?
Still on December 23rd?
Yeah.
I do vaguely remember that exchange, the one at the top of the second.
Is that the one that starts with you identifying yourself?
No, ma'am, it starts with the message says, group text for this weekend, Maria, Nick, Ed, Brett, and Darren.
You look at that third one.
Seems vaguely familiar.
Okay. So just so I'm clear then, Nick Balance is at Moscow Police Department when you're getting, on December 23rd, when you're getting these 2 warrants. Is that right?
If memory serves, that's correct.
Okay. Well, you told me that you're not the guy who understands how to interpret these records. Do you know anything about cell phone towers?
Very little, ma'am.
Okay. So when you wrote the second AT&T warrant, you have possession of Bryan Kohberger's call detail records or AT&T records, but you don't know what they mean, so you're relying on somebody else.
Yes, ma'am.
Who all did you rely on?
Mainly it was Special Agent Balance. He was my main point of contact for understanding what was going on.
Okay. In fact, in your affidavit for the second AT&T report, there's a couple of maps in there. Is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
And one of them has some video camera information. That's the first map. Where did that come from?
I do not recall. If you have a copy of it, I can refresh my memory and tell you.
I bet I do. I have what we've marked defendants B.
Are you referring to there's 2 maps, the WSU focused map that you're referring to? It's completely washed out on this copy. I can't even see what it is.
It's hard to see, isn't it? What I want to know is what you relied on to get that first one that talks about WSU and the cameras on WSU. So where'd you get that?
Yes, ma'am. So Special Agent Rob Hilley with the FBI was also co-located with us. He was tasked with analyzing that video from WSU and the surrounding area. So it was a conversation between he and I, pointing out areas of locations where the car was likely seen on surveillance footage. And that's what I relied upon to create that map.
So you created that map. How?
Through PowerPoint, I believe, ma'am. Memory serves.
You saved your work on that?
Yes, ma'am.
Let's go to the next map. That one would appear to be a trail or a path from south of Moscow back towards Lewiston or back towards Polk. Is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
Where did you get that map?
Same thing. It was just created using open source satellite imagery, and I think it was PowerPoint.
Did you create that?
Yes, ma'am.
Where did you get the information to draw that trail?
So that was used from the cell phone records referred to me by Special Agent Balance on his interpretation of possible places where someone could have driven between the location that it starts there and then back to Pullman.
So you did this on some open source mapping, not anything from Nick Balance creating a visual for you.
No, ma'am. I did view a draft report from Special Agent Balance to help me conceptualize this, but it did not look like this map.
Where's that draft report?
It is, best of my knowledge, it's already been provided to the prosecutor's office through the FBI channels.
Is this the lengthy past draft report or is it a different draft report?
Well, it would have to be the draft cast report. That's the only cast report I'm aware of from Special Agent Balance.
So on December 23rd, are you saying you looked at this past draft report to make that map that went into your affidavit to get the second set of records?
Yes, ma'am.
The one that was given to us in July of last year?
I don't know when you got it.
How many versions of that cast draft report have you seen?
I've only seen that one, ma'am. That's the only one I'm aware of.
All right. And from the FBI, we have Agent Balance and Agent Hilly at Moscow Police Department with you. Yes,
Yes, ma'am.
and all of this work is done with verbal communication, is that right?
The majority of it, yes, ma'am.
And Nick Balance's cast draft report.
Correct.
And I think Special Agent Imel's vehicle identification.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Let's talk about what you were seeking to get in this. Well, let me ask this before I leave the second search warrant. Is there anything else you relied on to obtain that second search warrant to compose your affidavit?
Like I said earlier, we relied on cell phone records from surviving roommates as well as the victims. We relied on interviews with the two surviving roommates that were present at the time. We relied on the surveillance footage, cell phone data. I'd have to go paragraph by paragraph, but that's what jumps to mind.
Of those things, are you relying on other people's work to put that all together?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now I'm ready to talk about the things that same day as the first one. And was there anything else from AT&T that you saw or relied on to get the second one off the ground?
No, ma'am.
And in the first AT&T search warrant, are you aware that part of the request was for timing advance reports?
Yes, ma'am.
And in fact, that also appears in your second search warrant request, right?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. And not only do you ask for the timing advance reports from AT&T, you ask for them from several other companies, correct? Verizon's version of it, T-Mobile's version of this kind of timing advance report. Is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. When was the first time you saw AT&T's timing advance report?
I do not recall when I first saw it.
Where is it?
To the best of my knowledge, all of that information from those returns has been provided to the prosecutor's office.
If I tell you I don't have a timing advance report or any from the other phone companies, where do I look for them?
I would direct you back to the prosecutor's office. Everything that Moscow PD received, in that realm, we have turned over to my knowledge.
But you know you've seen this report, is that right?
I do not recall if I've seen the timing advance reports. I'd have to see what it even looked like to know if I'd seen it.
Do you know what it is?
Not particularly. I'm no expert.
Okay. You wrote the search warrant though, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Well, how did you get the language for that if you don't know what this is?
So there's no secret that I rely heavily on people who are very highly educated in these topic areas to write this search warrant. So that language was likely conveyed to me through people who know much more than myself about cell phone data.
Who are those people?
Like I said, FBI Agent Balance and Detective Mowry were probably my two main points of contact for helping me with that language.
During the course of your investigation and work on the case that became the case that we're here for now, did you communicate with Agent Valance by email?
Yes, ma'am.
And did you communicate with other FBI agents by email?
Yes, ma'am.
And did that relate to the investigation of the scene and later the investigation of Bryan Kohberger?
Certainly, yes, ma'am.
Were those communications that assisted you in preparing affidavits and search warrants to carry out your duties in the case?
I do not recall.
But you recall the emails themselves.
I recall sending emails to FBI agents, yes, but
And-
specifics, no.
And receiving them?
Yes, ma'am.
Where are those emails now?
All emails that Moscow PD is aware of have been turned over to the prosecutor's office.
Your Honor, if I can have just a minute.
Sure, thank you.
Thank you. I don't have any other questions for now, but I think you have a couple of exhibits on the front end. If you don't need them for us, maybe I'll take them back.
Well, hold on. Do you have any questions?
Yes, I'll.
Yes, okay, I thought you were just stepping off, so. Jennings?
Yes, thank you.
Go ahead.
Morning, sir.
Good work.
To your knowledge, has all the evidence in Moscow Police Department's possession been turned over to the state for us to discover?
Yes, ma'am.
Now let's move to your PC affidavit. Can you explain to me what did the investigation look like during the time that you were writing that affidavit?
So as I said, the command center was established at the Moscow Police Department. The command center consisted of myself and numerous partners from the FBI and the Idaho State Police. We were all co-located there at Moscow PD. We also had individual sections assigned to do various tasks, collect video, conduct interviews, so on and so forth. The majority of those people were also co-located at the Moscow Police Department. So as the process for developing this affidavit began, those people would just come into the command center and relay information that was deemed to be critical or important. The reason for that was to shorten the chain of information to make sure that the folks, myself and my partners in the command post, got the clearest view of what the investigators on the ground were actually retrieving and learning as this went on. As they relay that to me, I input that into the affidavit.
And is that standard to rely on what other investigators tell you when you're applying for warrants?
Absolutely.
And is that what you did?
Yes, ma'am.
And is what you relied upon detailed in your probable cause affidavit?
Yes.
Now, talking about the timing advance records, are you aware that AT&T didn't provide timing advance records in December of 2022?
I do not remember.
Are you aware that they did not start providing those records until May of 2023?
Objection, leading.
Cross-examination.
It is overruled. Go ahead.
I'll re-ask. Are you aware that AT&T did not start providing those records until May of 2023?
Yes.
I don't have anything further.
Thank you. Ms. Taylor?
Thanks. Let's start there. May of 2023. Do you have timing advance records now from May of 2023?
I would have to direct you to Detective Mallory to answer that question. Don't know.
Okay. Did you write a new warrant for them in May of 2023?
I do not recall.
If you included them in two separate warrants in December of 2022, but they didn't provide them, why would you do that?
It was the language that was suggested to me to write the affidavit. So
Language suggested by an FBI agent who's an expert in the field?
yes, ma'am.
Yes. And do you know if he saw the timing advance reports?
I do not know.
All right. Now, those first and second AT&T warrants were how many hours from receiving the return on the first one until the second one was given to Judge Marshall at 4:45?
I do not remember.
Not very many hours, though. Would that be fair?
Likely not.